Vanakkam, good morning. Welcome to the Peche Kacheri Nigalchi. Before we start the proceedings, request everybody to rise for the Tamil Thai Vaalthu, followed by the prayer song.
நீராறும் கடலுடுத்த நிலமடந்தை கெழிலொழுகும் சீராறும் வதனமென திகழ்பரத கண்டமிதில் தெக்கணமும் அதிசிறந்த திராவிடனல் திருநாடும் தக்க சிறு பிறை நுதலும் தரித்தனரும் திலகமுமே அத்திலக வாசனை போல் அனைத்துலகும் இன்பமுற எத்திசையும் புகழ் மணக்க இருந்த பெரும் தமிழனங்கே தமிழனங்கே உன் சீரிழமை திறம் வியந்து செயல் மறந்து வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே. வையத்து வாழ்வீர்காள் நாமும் நம்பாவைக்கு வையத்து வாழ்வீர்காள் நாமும் நம்பாவைக்கு செய்யும் கிரீசைகள் கேளீரோ பார்க்கடலுள் செய்யும் கிரீசைகள் கேளீரோ பார்க்கடலுள் பைய தூயின்ற பரமனடி பாடி பைய தூயின்ற பரமனடி பாடி நெய்யுண்ணோம் பாலுண்ணோம் நாட்காலே நீராடி நெய்யுண்ணோம் பாலுண்ணோம் நாட்காலே நீராடி மையிட்டெழுதோம் மலரிட்ட நாம் முடியோம் செய்யாதன செய்யோம் திக்குறளை சென்றோதோம் ஐயமும் பிச்சையும் ஆதனையும் கை காட்டி ஐயமும் பிச்சையும் ஆதனையும் கை காட்டி உயுமாறண்ணி உகந்தேலோரெம் பாவாய் உயுமாறண்ணி உகந்தேலோரெம் பாவாய்
Thank you for that, Mrs. Padmashri Srinivasan. Mrs. Padmashri is a disciple of Srimati Ambujam Vedantam and Sri Delhi Sundararajan. She is also a All India Radio B high grade artist. She's won various awards like the Sangeeta Shri. She was the runner-up at the M.S. Subbulakshmi Voice of the Year. So thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Friends, once again, a warm welcome on behalf of Tamil Heritage Trust. to this Pecha Kacheri. In fact, we see a lot of faces that we're seeing for the first time after the pandemic. So it's been a while since we some of us met in person. So we are so glad to see you at this event once again. Before we start the day's event, I would like to give a brief introduction to Tamil Heritage Trust and its activities, and also before we go to the first talk. Tamil Heritage Trust is a not-for-profit, volunteer-driven organization predominantly based out of Chennai. The objectives of Tamil Heritage are to help increase the understanding, dissemination, appreciation and celebration of India's rich and diverse cultural heritage. Towards this, we conduct various programs. We conduct a monthly talk on the first Saturday of every month, where we have both enthusiasts and experts from across various fields who come and deliver a talk in our monthly talk forum. Right? So these topics vary from art, architecture, linguistics, poetry, sculpture, anything that falls under the larger umbrella of India's cultural heritage. We also do this event. We'll talk a little bit about this a little later. Unlike our monthly heritage talks, which are based out of different themes, our Pecha Kacheri, this event is a 2-day seminar, a 2-day intense event where there is a central theme like what Vijayanagara we are talking about this time, and we have a series of lectures around that central theme. We also conducted 2 editions of Indology Festival, where we invited scholars, experts from not just from India but from across the world to speak and enthrall us on various aspects related to Indology, Indic studies, and their field of research. So we had 2 editions. One we did in 2020, and this year we did in June. The theme of this year's Indology Festival was Temple Builders of Medieval India, where we spoke about the various dynasties and their contribution to Indian heritage and art between the 8th and the 13th century. All our programs are available, including this one, are available on YouTube. So very easy, go to YouTube, check Tamil Heritage Trust, and then you should be able to find pretty much all our programs live on YouTube. We also conduct various workshops for the general public. We conduct workshops on temple art appreciation, museum appreciation. We also have a workshop on Pallava Grantham script. Every year, typically during the month of January, we do what is called a site seminar, which is a heritage study tour. So every year we select a place within India, a cultural site within India. But before going to that site, we spend at least 3 to 4 months of preparation as a group upfront before we travel to that place. Learn about different aspects of that place, do PowerPoint presentations within that group, and prepare ourselves better so that when we go to the cultural site, we are not going there as mere tourists. We are going there as perhaps well-informed visitors to the site. We've been doing that for about a decade now. We also do a program called Alamar Avai, Teachers for Heritage, where Tamil Heritage, we work with the teachers of various schools and educate them better about the various facets of Indian heritage, and help them become better ambassadors of heritage within their schools, so that they can take it forward to their school children. We also this year we also instituted the V. Venkaya Epigraphy Award. This was instituted by the family of Sri V. Venkaya, who was an epigraphist, and this year we instituted the first edition of the award, and as you can see, the first edition of the award went to Dr. Y. Subrayulu. This is an award that is meant to recognize individuals who have played an outstanding role in the field of epigraphy. This could be discovery or rediscovery of epigraphs, or finding new epigraphs. That is that is what this award is meant to be. Last 3 years, we have also been instituting the Tamil Heritage Trust Professor S. Swaminathan Award, which is meant to recognize individuals who play a great role in various aspects of Indian heritage. This could be contributing towards the understanding of heritage, dissemination of knowledge, and the preservation of Indian heritage. You can see the winners of the last 3 years award. 2020 we had Madhusudanan Kalaiselvan. 2021 we had Dr. Shankar Narayanan, who's going to talk today. We have Madhusudanan talking tomorrow, and this year the award went to Mr. Pradeep Chakravarti. If you want to know more about our programs, if you want to receive email notification on our programs, all you need to do is send an email to this ID, admin@tamilheritage.in, and you should be able to receive notifications of all our future programs. Our website is www.tamilheritage.in. So, Pechu Kacheri. Every year during the Margari month, the Chennai's music and dance festival is world renowned. We have artists, connoisseurs, rasikas who come from not just all parts of India, but it's become a global event now. We have people coming from various parts of the world, coming to Chennai, spending their time during this Margari festival. So about a decade ago, Professor Swaminathan, our founder of Tamil Heritage Trust, he said, when the whole world is celebrating a Pattu Kacheri and a Natya Kacheri, why do we, why can't we have, provide another avenue for people to enjoy and soak in our cultural heritage outside dance and music, right? So that was the genesis of this Pechu Kacheri, and we've been doing that since 2011. So as you can see, the Pechu Kacheri, our Pechu Kacheris have had different styles. We have had Pechu Kacheri based on a place. You can see that in 2013 we did a Pechu Kacheri on Srirangam. So this was about Srirangam temple town and everything around Srirangam. We had a Pechu Kacheri on Kanchipuram in 2017. Earlier this year, this is actually the second Pechu Kacheri for this year. The first one was held online in January, and that was titled Kalinga, and this was about Orissa. So we've had Pechu Kacheris centered around a place. Then we've had thematic Pechu Kacheris. So if you see 2011 and 2012, the themes were Tamil literature in 2011, and then we had Indian painting over 10,000 years. So tracing the whole journey of Indian painting from all the way from rock art through various generations of paintings. So we had thematic Pechu Kacheris as well. Then we had one Pechu Kacheri centered around a personality. So in the year 2014, we celebrated the life and contributions made by the late Dr. Nagaswamy, and his contributions towards various fields relating to Indian heritage. So that was a Pechu Kacheri where Dr. Nagaswamy himself and also various people who worked with Nagaswamy and the people who he had mentored in his career spoke about his contributions in various facets. Then we have Pechu Kacheris based on kingdom. So if you can see 2018 and 19, this was Chola art in 2018, 2019 we had Pandya art, right? And here we are, where we are celebrating the Vijayanagara kingdom and everything around the Vijayanagara kingdom, right? So why Vijayanagara? There is something that goes on with a few art lovers, art connoisseurs, if I may say. We talk in bated breath about the Pallavas. We talk highly about all the architectural splendors we have at Mamallapuram, at Kanchipuram, and various other structures that the Pallavas built. We talk greatly about, likewise, Chalukyas, Badami, Pattadakkal. We speak very highly of the Chola art, the big 4 temples, and also all the miniature sculptures that the Cholas have. We talk highly about Hoysalas and Pandyas, perhaps. But somehow, when it comes to Vijayanagara, among a section of art lovers, art connoisseurs, it is perhaps not spoken in the same bated breath as the same pedestal as we keep the rest of them, like the Pallavas and Cholas. Somehow we seem to think that Vijayanagara art does not have the same class or whatever aesthetics as let's say the Pallavas or the Cholas. In fact, there are a few people who, a section among the art connoisseurs who say that anything beyond the 13th century is not of interest to us, right? There are still some people who say that, right? So what is great about the Vijayanagara? Their most obvious and most famous claim to fame is how the Vijayanagara rulers were responsible for why the Islamic invasion did not happen in South India, or did not take place much in South India. Again, as you know, during the 13th century, the old order in South India was changing. We had the Kakatiyas of Warangal, the Pandyas of Madurai. Then we had the Kannada Hoysalas, under siege due to Islamic invasions. And then two rulers, Harihara and Bukka, the founding kings of the Vijayanagara Empire, helped thwart some of that Islamic invasion that threatened to come to the southern part of the country. And then within a century, Vijayanagara grew to be one of the largest empires in South India. So I think this is something that most of us know. Then the other most obvious, most famous thing is the Hampi Utsav that happens every year, which has been promoted by various successive governments. So every year, thanks to the Hampi Utsav, people have got a lot of understanding about Hampi and the Vijayanagara rulers. What about their other contributions? Today, a lot of the large temples that you see, particularly in South India, the Pallavas did not build several big temples. The Cholas built a few, not as much, right? Today, you go to any temple or any big temple within Tamil Nadu, go to a small town as well. You are likely to find a temple where they might say that the core structure was built either by a Chola or a Pandya, but the structure, the campus, the premises around it was expanded and built and raised during the Vijayanagara kingdom. So all the big Rajagopurams that you see are perhaps the contribution of the Vijayanagara kings and the Vijayanagara empire, right? So when you see temples with large Rajagopurams, large campus, large premises, the genesis of that starts from the Vijayanagara empire. Paintings, a lot of paintings that we find, paintings that still survive. We still have a lot of paintings that come from the Vijayanagara period. At least in India, the only kingdom which is known by the city and not by the name of the dynasty is perhaps Vijayanagara, right? Vijayanagara is actually 4 different dynasties. There is Sangama, there is Saluva, there is Tuluva, there is Aravidu. But Vijayanagara, the city, the only other name that perhaps comes to mind is the Roman Empire, right? So Rome and Vijayanagara are probably the 2 empires that are known by the name of the city. Languages, the Vijayanagara kings contributed a lot towards languages. Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, Sanskrit, we had scholars who did a lot of contribution during that period. The 5 major epics of Telugu, in Tamil we have the Aimbaran Kapiyangal, the equivalent of that in Telugu, were written during the Vijayanagara period. Krishna Devaraya was a great patron of art and literature. He was also called the Andhra Bhoja. He was the author of a Telugu work named Amukta Malyada and also a Sanskrit work, Jambavati Kalyanam. His court was also adorned by 8 great poets called the Ashtadigajas. We had foreign rulers, foreign travelers who come. They've chronicled how Vijayanagara looked at its peak. It is also considered the golden age of literature in South India. Vijayanagara rulers patronized Kannada, Telugu, Sanskrit and Tamil scholars who wrote in the Jain, Veerasaiva, Vaishnava traditions. We have hundreds of works on various aspects of Indian culture, religion, biographies, music, grammar, poetics, medicine, and a lot more. If you take music, Purandaradasa, who is a great proponent of Carnatic music, he lived during the Vijayanagara times. Friends, that is the Vijayanagara that we are going to be celebrating, we are going to be discussing over the next 2 days. This year's Pechi Kacheri Vijayanagara, a city, a dynasty, an empire. Over the next 2 days, we have 10 eminent historians, scholars, who are going to be taking us through the length and breadth of Vijayanagara Empire. From their paintings to their temples, from their architecture to the festivals, from the languages and literature that they help promote to their history. We look forward to your participation over the next 2 days and your active participation, and let us celebrate the Vijayanagara city, dynasty, and an empire together. Before I introduce our first speaker, a few housekeeping announcements. Request all of you in the auditorium to put your mobiles in silent mode. Either switch it off or put it in silent mode. We have 2 exits from this auditorium. Our restrooms are along the corridor. There is coffee available outside that will be served during the breaks. Lunch, we expect to get to lunch around 1:15ish. So lunch will be available outside. You can purchase lunch at the front place. There is also a bookstall that is available outside. There are several heritage-related books, English and Tamil, that are available. Request you to take a look at it. I'd like to welcome our first speaker for the day. The topic is Vijayanagara, Beginnings of an Empire. And to deliver this lecture, we have none other than Dr. Chithra Madhavan. Dr. Chithra Madhavan needs no introduction in this forum, but it's my duty to introduce her. Dr. Chithra Madhavan has an MA and M.Phil from the Department of Indian History, University of Madras, and a Ph.D. from the Department of Ancient History and Archaeology, University of Mysore. She is the recipient of 2 post-doctoral fellowships from the Department of Culture, Government of India, and from the Indian Council of Historical Research, New Delhi. Dr. Chithra is a guest lecturer at many institutions in Chennai, like Kalakshetra Foundation, the Arts Management Program of Dakshin Chitra, and the Asian College of Journalism. She frequently delivers lectures on heritage-related topics at various places in India. She's spoken at many of her past Peche Kacheris. So without further ado, welcome Dr. Chithra. Ramki, Vijay, connect to her laptop. Your laptop connect. Yes. Like presentation mode. Or what are the scene?
Namaskaram. A very, very good morning to all of you. Feels so nice to be back with friends in Tamil Heritage after 2 years of online programs. My gratitude, my humble thanks to Tamil Heritage for inviting me to this series of lectures to Dr. Swaminathan and his very, very dedicated group of people in Tamil heritage. Many, many thanks for all the wonderful arrangements that you have made. So without further ado, this is the topic given to me, Vijayanagara, Beginnings of an Empire. I couldn't have been more happy with any other topic, because Krishnadeva is everybody's hero, we know that. I mean, it's a household name. But my particular hero as far as Vijayanagara are concerned is Kumara Kampanna, and I'm happy, very, very happy that this topic I was able to talk about. So, basically, where do we start as far as Vijayanagara is concerned? We have to go back in time. As Mr. Kishore just said, the Cholas were a dominant power in South India for very long, from the 9th century up to the last quarter of the 13th century. They were all over the place, and their exit in 1279 left a huge vacuum in South India. The Pandyas, of course, who were responsible for the exit of the Cholas, occupied their place. From Kanyakumari to Nellore was the Pandyan Empire. They did their best for a very, very long time. But then, at the request of one particular Pandyan prince called Sundara Pandya, Alauddin Khilji's army came into South India in the years 1310, 1311, and there was a major catastrophe. Similarly, in 1323, Ulugh Khan's army, Ulugh Khan, who was Muhammad bin Tughlaq to be, his army comes in, and again, mega devastation happens in South India. So there was political unrest, there was no economic stability. Of culture, we need not speak. It was bad. It was a bad scene. It was also open for many more invasions from the north. The way had been paved by Malik Kafur, and it was going to happen. So who was going to stem this tide of invasions from the north? There was nobody in sight. They were all weak powers. The Pandyas had been weakened, the Hoysalas had been weakened, Kakatiyas had been weakened. The Kerala rulers had the Western Ghats as a support, so we needn't bother about them. So, bad scene. And the Kakatiya Empire had tumbled, a kingdom had tumbled, and there were two young people, Hakka and Bukka, better known in history as Harihara and Bukka. They had, according to most historians, been under the employment of the Kakatiyas, and after the devastating invasions, the two brothers, who originally belonged to a place called Kampilli near Hampi, the village of Kampilli is still there, were captured by the army of Muhammad bin Tughlaq and taken to Delhi and put back in Kampilli to rule as the representatives of the Tughlaq Empire. Now, according to tradition and according to history, watching all this from his Mata, the Shankara Mata in Sringeri, was Swami Vidyaranya, and I dedicate this lecture to him. Avidyaranya Kantare Brahmatam Praninam Sada Vidya Margopa Deshantam Vidyaranya Gurum Shraye. To souls that wander in utter dismay in the dense woods of mental ignorance, he shows the path of true wisdom. Homage to the great Saint Vidyaranya. So, but for Swami Vidyaranya, the Vijayanagara, the nucleus of the Vijayanagara kingdom would not have happened. It would not have grown into the gigantic empire that it became. South India would not have been prevented from successive invasions from the north. It would have been devastated. None of the culture that we are talking about today, the Cholas built, Pandyas built, Hoysalas, Kakatiyas, they all built. None of it may be there for us to see except in ruins. So this seer, a seer in the true sense of the word, saw what was happening in the south, and he decided to stem the rot. So he, Harihara and Bukka approached him, and together they formed a formidable trio. So Vidyaranya was the brain, the architect behind the nucleus of the Vijayanagara kingdom. And he mentored them for 5 generations, not just Harihara and Bukka. For 5 generations, he was their brain. And then the Vijayanagara Empire took off to greater glory than ever heard before. So this is a painting of Swami Vidyaranya. Many of you may have seen it in photographs or in person. It is on the ceiling of the Mahamantapa in the Virupaksha temple in Hampi. So that is Swami Vidyaranya in royal procession. So as Kishore just said, the Vijayanagara is not just one bloodline, not just one dynasty, comprised of 4 families: Sangama, Saluva, Tuluva and Aravida. And since the topic given to me is only the beginnings, I'll be dealing only with the Sangama dynasty, and that too not in full, only the beginnings. That itself is a lot. So this is the lineage over here. Some very great kings, some not very great kings, and even some of the not very great kings were very interesting people, and we'll talk about them as well. So we go to Harihara. He and his younger brother Bukka were the sons of a chieftain named Sangama. Altogether there were 5 brothers: Hakka, Bukka, Kampanna, Marappa and Muddappa. Kampanna was a brother of Harihara, and therefore the son of Bukka was called Kumara Kampanna, and we'll come to him later. One of the 5, I usually don't do PPTs. It makes me very uncomfortable. I just have slideshows. You see, this Vijayanagara Empire is so profound, and one is so scared that one would leave out many vital points that I've resorted to being like a school teacher. Please forgive me. So he was one of the 5 sons of Sangama, and became independent and celebrated his coronation, and immediately he had to contend with many powers. The first thorn in his side was Hoysala Ballala III. Now, I'm going to repeat this point many times in the course of this lecture. It's become an obsession with me that our history books teach us very little. This Hoysala Ballala III was a very great king. He tried so hard to unite South India, but we hardly hear of him in anywhere. So this Veera Ballala III, great in his own right, was an irritant to Harihara the First, because his kingdom was abutting that of the Vijayanagara kingdom, and he was also a very ambitious king, this Veera Ballala. But he was ultimately killed by the Sultan of Madurai, something we are going to discuss in detail in the later part of this lecture. So when he was killed by the Sultan of Madurai, his son was totally helpless, and the Vijayanagara army overpowered him. And the conquest of the Hoysala kingdom was a feather in the cap of Harihara I. The capital of the Vijayanagara then kingdom, later empire, was Anagondi on the north banks of river Tungabhadra. And it was susceptible to invasion, being on the north bank. So on the advice of sage Swami Vidyaranya, it was shifted to the south bank. This was the Hoysala empire, Hoysala kingdom. And this is the city that Harihara and Bukka, on the advice of Swami Vidyaranya, chose, the present day site of Hampi, which was traditionally Pampa. Pampa became Hampa, became Hampi. And this is the site of the ancient Kishkinda in Ramayana fame. So everywhere you go in Hampi, you have traces of the Ramayana. You have the Matanga Parvata, you have the Rishyamukha hill, you have Sugriva's cave, and here and there and everywhere you'll see sculptures of Hanuman. It was Hanuman country. This is where he met Rama and Lakshmana. This is where he took them to Sugriva. This is where that friendship, that great Sakyam was, that pact was done between Sugriva and Rama. Everything here is from the Valmiki Ramayana. So it is surrounded by the Hemakuta, Matanga, Malayavanta hills, and this is the river Tungabhadra on one side. It is a huge barrier to enemies. On the other side, there are a row of hills. So coming back to Harihara, it is said that it took full 7 years for constructing this new capital, and he administered his kingdom from the Hemakuta hill. Next to the Virupaksha temple, you will find the Hemakuta hill, and that's where the palace of Harihara was. Now, if you look at the inscriptions of Vijayanagara, especially the copper plate grants, you will find all this is the Virupaksha temple. It's very much a living temple, unlike others in Hampi which have been devastated. I'm showing you a copper plate grant of the Vijayanagara times, much after Harihara. But why I'm showing it to you is because this was written fully in Sanskritam. Only the last part is signed Sri Virupaksha. And the reason for that is that the Vijayanagara kings decided right at the beginning that they would not rule in their own right. They would be regents of this god Swami Virupaksha, who was their Kuladaivam or the family deity. This deity, this temple, Virupaksha temple, was not created in the Vijayanagara times. It is very much a pre-Vijayanagara temple on the banks of river Pampa. This god was called Pampapati, and he was renamed Virupaksha, Shiva. Virupaksha, he with a third eye, distorted eye, so to speak. And all the royal documents of the Vijayanagara kings were signed Sri Virupaksha, and that is what you see in this copper plate grant, and this is what is here. End of every copper plate inscription, you will not have the name of the king who was actually giving that donation, whatever document that was, it would be Sri Virupaksha. But at the beginning of the document, it would say, so and so, this king was doing this, end would be Sri Virupaksha. Now, during the reign of Harihara, Tamil Nadu was not under their control as yet. It was ruled, the northern part was ruled by chieftains called the Sambhuvarayas, very powerful chieftains. And at that time, one particular king of that dynasty was called Rajanarayana. And he was captured by the Sultan of Madurai. And the Vijayanagara army was sent to free him, and he was put back on his throne. The Reddy kings of Andhra, very strong kings of Andhra, were again defeated by Harihara. There was a small kingdom called the Kadamba kingdom on the Konkan coast. They were also defeated. They were subjugated by Harihara the First. And the greatest irritant to the Vijayanagara kingdom and later empire were the Bahmani sultans to the north. Continued to be for a very, very long time. Though a source of anxiety, Harihara didn't fight against them. Though Harihara wanted to fight against the Sultan of Madurai deep down south, he was hesitant to do so because he had to protect the northern frontier from the Bahmani sultans. So this is where the Bahmani kingdom was. This is Vijayanagara. The Krishna was the borderline, Tungabhadra also for that matter. And this was northern Tamil Nadu, approximately the Tondai Mandalam area over which the Sambhuvarayas ruled, and ultimately they were going to conquer them. So Harihara's reign was a period of great political activity, the seeds of a mighty empire. Only the seeds were sown at that time. Great strategist, and we must not forget, the king can't do everything. He has to have able ministers, and one such was Anantarasa Chikka Udaya, and with his help, Harihara laid the foundations of a very, very strong empire. These are some of the coins of Harihara the First. Bukka Harihara didn't have sons, so it had to be his younger brother, his very, very strong support when he was ruling, his younger brother Bukka, who became king. Bukka had a problem as soon as he became the ruler, still king, not emperor. It is that the sons of his other brothers had become a little impossible to deal with, and they were trying to, assert their independence in various parts of the kingdom. So he had to quell their powers, his nephew's powers, and he decided to make his own sons as viceroys because they would be far more loyal to him than his nephews. And among them, his very able son, Kumara Kampanna, was made the governor of this place called Mulbagal, that is the Kolar area. Again, this Rajanarayana Sambhuvaraya, whom Harihara had saved, somewhat became independent, and he had to send an army against him and crush him. Rajanarayana died, and his son also, so Bukka took over the territory extending as far as south as rivers South Pennar and the Kollidam. Coming to the Vijayanagara emblem, this you can see in so many parts of South India. If we care to look, they are there on pillars, they are there on the walls, they are there on the steps, even steps which we step on and go, they are there. And they are there sometimes as paintings. This is a modern painting, and you have the Varaha, the wild boar, and then you have a dagger or a sword in front, and Surya and Chandra above. And there is a symbolism to it. It's not just another symbol, not just another emblem, like Varaha Swami, Vishnu's incarnation, the third incarnation, who saved the goddess Earth. The Vijayanagara rulers wanted to save South India from many an invasion. And how were they going to do it? With the help of their arms. Till when were they going to do it? Till Surya and Chandra existed. So, for almost 400 years they did it. I think Surya and Chandra may last longer, but they laid the foundations. Vijayanagara, again coming to what Bukka did, the Vijayanagara army, again this Bahmani Sultans, series of them were a huge problem for them, fought against the armies. The Muslim historian Firishta claims an outright victory for the Bahmani Sultan, but it appears on further research, I have taken this from the series of very wonderful history books, The History and Culture of the Indian People, edited by the noted historian R.C. Majumdar. And though Firishta claims an outright victory, from other sources it seems that the Vijayanagara and Bahmani armies were on equal footing. And the river Krishna was recognized as the boundary between these two formidable powers. The Reddys again come into the picture. Now Bukka was now somewhat secure of the northern boundary. They were stronger now than in the time of Harihara I, turned his attention to the Sultanate of Madurai, coins of Bukka I. He was an ardent supporter of the Vedic faith and had the title Vedamarga Pratishthapanacharya, establisher of the path of the Vedas. Vijayanagara rulers were very clear. They wanted to resurrect Hinduism. They wanted to save South India from the armies from the north. Very, very clear, and it comes out again crystal clear from their inscriptions. And he made scholars learn from Swami Vidyaranya fresh commentaries on the Vedas. Not only that, Telugu literature was promoted. We come now to the Sultanate of Madurai. We've heard of the Sultanate of Delhi. All those great kings were there from the beginning. Aibak, Iltutmish, Razia Sultana, all that. How many people know there was one small sultanate here sitting Land's End in Madurai? So when Muhammad bin Tughlaq's army came, he was then Ulugh Khan. He was not then the emperor of Delhi. In 1323 he came, formidable fighter. He came with a huge army, and South India was virtually gone. The Hoysalas had surrendered, the Kakatiyas had been completely trampled upon, the Pandyas, so to speak, were totally gone, and it was not a raid of the time of Alauddin Khilji. Malik Kafur just came like lightning and went like lightning. Not so Muhammad bin Tughlaq's army. It came with an intent and a purpose, and he established his governor in Madurai, hoping that this governor would remain loyal to him. So a serious annexation of South India took place in the reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Sultanate of Madurai was formed in approximately 1325. He sent Jalaluddin Hasan Shah as his governor in 1330, and this place became one of the 23 provinces of the Tughlaq Empire down south in Tamil Nadu. This person who was sent was first loyal, but he must have thought Delhi is far away, so he declared independence in 1335. Ibn Battuta, a name that we hear of very often in history textbooks because he is the major source for knowing about Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He is also the main source for knowing about the Sultanate of Madurai. These are the coins of Jalaluddin Hasan Shah because he declared his independence and he could mint coins in his own name. So Ibn Battuta's writings give us a lot of information, and he says that Jalaluddin Hasan Shah was killed by one of his nobles. That noble ruled only for 1 year. He was also killed by an assassin, and the next person ruled only for 40 days. This is how the Madurai Sultanate went on. I just want to read this very fast. Firuz Shah was succeeded by Ghiyasuddin Damagani Shah, who was a son-in-law of the first one, Jalaluddin Hasan Shah. He was also, interestingly, the brother-in-law of Ibn Battuta. So there was a relationship over there. And this king was known to be extremely cruel, unprincipled and treacherous, committed barbaric acts against the local population. And Ibn Battuta has clearly mentioned in his writings that it was for these reasons that God hastened the death of Ghiyasuddin. And Ghiyasuddin fought against Veera Ballala, about whom we spoke earlier, and defeated and killed him. Veera Ballala was killed at the age of 80 plus. His body was stuffed with straw and hung on the walls of the city of Madurai, and Ibn Battuta saw this in circa 1342. Then Ghiyasuddin Damagni Shah died in 1342, succeeded by a nephew who had earlier been employed in Delhi as a domestic help. he came to the south and hearing about his uncle, bribed the nobles with gold and secured their support and the throne. Ibn Battuta, who was there at that time, states that he got 300 pieces of gold and other honors. And during his reign, Ibn Battuta left Madurai and went elsewhere. Now a little bit about Veera Ballala the first. Now why I am not digressing, I am not going off at a tangent, I am talking about Veera Ballala with an intent and a purpose, and that is because he must have been the person, I feel, who inspired the Vijayanagara rulers to unite South India, because that was what Ballala was trying to do. This is this date, Veera Ballala. And that is the extent of the Hoysala Empire. Not many of us know that the Hoysalas conquered the northern part of Tamil Nadu, and in the reign of a king called Veera Somanatha, an ancestor of Veera Ballala, they established themselves in a place called Somanathapuram near Trichy, which is now Samayapuram. That was Somanathapuram, and they stayed there. Veera Ballala also made Tiruvannamalai his secondary capital, because his capital Dwarasamudra, present day Halebeedu, had been totally devastated. This is Tiruvannamalai. And as you go into the temple of Tiruvannamalai, you enter from the east side, you go through that big Gopuram, and then you come to the second Gopuram, and if you notice the board, it will say Vallala Gopuram, that was built in the time of Veera Ballala, and you have this king's portrait sculpture over there in Anjali Hasta, because he was totally devoted to this god of Annamalayar, of Tiruvannamalai. And it is said that even now, once in a year, on the Tithi or the death anniversary of Veera Ballala, the Utsavamurti of the god comes out, goes to the place where the palace of Veera Ballala was, and does his Antima Karya. So that is the story of Veera Ballala. Now coming back to the Sultans of Madurai, Nasiruddin Shah was succeeded by Adil Shah, then Farrukuddin Mubarak Shah, finally by Alauddin Sikandar Shah. It was in the time of Sikandar Shah that Kumara Kampanna, the Vijayanagara prince, attacked the Sultan of Madurai and defeated him. But this Shah's coins are found till 1378. Perhaps he ruled as a minor, and finally the Sultanate came to an end. This Prince Kumara Kampanna, whose name we hardly, we don't even hear about Vijayanagara in our books, where are we going to hear about Kumara Kampanna? And this was one outstanding prince. Son of Bukkaraya the First, probably the favorite son because he was so capable. He was ruling over the Kolar area and entrusted with the supreme command of the Vijayanagara army to proceed south to defeat the Sultan of Madurai. Now, why we are repeating the Sultan of Madurai, the Sultanate of Madurai, is because they were very powerful. They were there in Land's End. And if Vijayanagara wanted to contend with the powers in the north, they had to unify the entire south. And this was not possible until the Sambhavarayas and the Hoysalas and the Sultan of Madurai were totally out of the way. They had a strategy, they had an agenda, and they succeeded. So the army, big army headed by Kumara Kampanna as a supreme commander, set off in 1370 from Senji, our own Jinji, and defeated the Sultan's army at Samayapuram near Trichy. Then they went towards Madurai. The battle between the two forces took place somewhere between Trichy and Madurai. The Sultan was defeated and he was killed, but some of his followers did not give up and shut themselves in Madurai. Kumara Kampanna laid siege to Madurai and captured it. So that was the end. 1371, the Sultanate of Madurai ended. And the best known source for Kumara Kampanna's march against the Sultan of Madurai are not his 100-odd inscriptions in Tamil Nadu. It is not from any other source, but from a literary piece, a book called Madura Vijayam, also called the Kamparaya Charitram, authored by his princess, his wife, Ganga Devi, who was a great poet. She accompanied her prince on this expedition. I mean, that is unheard of. Where would a princess, and she would have been in Antapuram in the harem, but this lady boldly set off with her husband to Madurai. And S. Thiruvenkatachari, who has edited this Madura Vijayam, a pioneering work published by Annamalai University, sadly out of print. I hope somebody will do something about it. I quoting, the Madura Vijayam Veera Kamparaya Charitam by Ganga Devi was discovered by accident amidst a heap of worn out palm leaf manuscripts as part of a series of Sanskrit works, and but for the careful scrutiny of the head Pandit of the curator of the Sanskrit Manuscripts Library in Trivandrum, it would have gone the way of many other works of the past which are not available to us. Unquote. This almost happened to the Arthashastra as well. It was discovered by chance, and then it's the world's treasure now. And when Tirvengadachari adds, the Madura Vijayam is perhaps the only historical work for the history of South India before the 15th century. Ganga Devi may, with some appropriateness, be called the first historian of South India in any scientific sense. But having said that, this is not a purely historical work, it's a quasi-historical work. She was a poet, she glorifies her husband, the book was meant to glorify her husband. A Sanskrit poet of very high standard, very high caliber. She in fact compares herself with a whole galaxy of great poets who lived before her. And this I got from the net. So there is a book, Madura Vijayam, Veera Kamparaya Charitram of Ganga Devi. Now in this book, there are many very interesting points that have been said. She talks about the situation of the Tamil country before the advent of Kumara Kampanna. And this I'm going to read to you. One verse. Adirangam avapta yoga nidram harim udvijayati iti jata bhitihi patitam muhuhu ishtakanikayam panachakrena nivarayati ahindraha. It means, see this second line. In Srirangam, the Lord of Serpents is seen warding off the tumbling debris of brick with his hood. Let their fall disturb the sleep of yoga in which Hari is wrapped up there. Meaning, the Vimanam was giving way in Srirangam. It was in such a bad state, it was falling on Ranganatha, and this Adisesha bent his hoods forward to prevent all that from falling on the Lord. It was in such a bad state. I'm not reading out the other one, but when I look at the state of the temples of other gods also, says Ganga Devi, my distress knows no bounds. The foldings of their door are eaten up by woodworms. The arches over their inner sanctuaries are rent with wild growths of vegetation. She talks about wolves, foxes howling in the temple premises. She talks about the Tamarabharani, which was once scented with sandalwood, running with blood and gore. It's a very distressing picture that Ganga Devi paints for us. With all the hype and hyperbole and all that, a kernel of truth was also there, because even Batuta also says that. So Kumara Kampanna had, according to Ganga Devi in her book Madura Vijayam, had a dream in which goddess Meenakshi came and gave him a sword. So he was spiritually empowered, says Ganga Devi, and he went forth against the Sultan of Madurai and defeated him. Having done that, he was appointed, I'll come to that a little later, but for now, he was the Mahamandaleshwara, provincial head of the entire Tamil country, was our friend Kumara Kampanna. Now there are 132 inscriptions of Kumara Kampanna here in the Tamil Nadu, and all are dated before 1374. Only one is dated after that, it should be after that. He was the Mahamandaleshwara, and he lived only for 3 years after the conquest of the Sultanate of Madurai. So he ruled between 1352 and 1374. He had a very loyal team. One was Gopanna, the other was Sadhuva Mangu, and it was with the Sadhuva Mangu was of great help to this prince in his wars against the Sambhuvarayas and the Sultan of Madurai. This title Sadhuva or Hawk was conferred on him by Kumara Kampanna. Now we come to a person called Gopanna, whom we cannot ever forget. So Gopanna, these are the details. Apastamba Sutra, Varadaraja Gotra, joined Kumara Kampanna as early as 1361, and many of his inscriptions have been found. He was a supervisor of temples. And why I'm showing you this Kailasanatha temple in Kanchipuram is that there were some lands belonging to a temple nearby, a very ancient temple, now called the Aneka Tangapadam temple, and that had been assigned to this temple. So he took it back from the Kailasnatha temple and gave it to the former temple. Now, this was the kind of work he was doing. Gopanna was ruling from a place called Senji. Supervisor of temples was he. At this point of time, there is near Senji a place called Singavaram. Those who go to Senji must go to Singavaram. There is a lovely temple for Ranganatha there. It's a cave temple, belongs to the 7th century, to the period of Mahendravarman Pallava. I am talking about the Vijayanagara times, but now I am taking you back to the time of Mahendravarman Pallava. This huge Lord Ranganatha here, this Anantashayana Perumal, is completely made of the living rock, as is the entire temple. Typically Mahendravarman's period. And Gopanna was ruling over this entire area. And like everybody else, he had come to know that the Ranganatha Swami temple in Srirangam was in a very dire state, very bad state. We heard what Ganga Devi had to say in Amodara Vijayam, terrible state. The Utsava Murti of Ranganatha, called Namperumal or Azhiya Manavalan, had been taken out. And he had been going all over South India, place to place to place, and finally he was kept in that hill shrine of Tirumala. Safely, Lord Utsavamurti of Ranganatha Perumal was there. Gopanna wanted to reopen the Srirangam temple. So he goes to Tirumala, brings that image all the way, keeps it in Singavaram, worships him here along with the Ubayanachya, Sridevi and Bhudevi, goes to Srirangam, defeats the Muslim governor who was there in Srirangam, comes back to Singavaram, takes the images of the Utsavamurti of Ranganatha and the Ubayanachyas, goes to Srirangam, opens the doors and keeps him there for reconsecration. This was a great, great thing done in the time of Kumara Kampanna when Gopanna was his governor. So this is the Singavaram temple. Please go there en route to Thiruvannamalai or to Senji. These are old images. This is how you have to climb. It's a small hill, very, very clearly worth the climb. The view from there is fantastic, and you can think of the great work Kumara Kampanna and Gopanna did. Now, at this point of time, there was a person called Vedanta Deshika. The Vaishnavites in this audience will immediately recognize him as one of the greatest acharyas of Sri Vaishnavism. He ruled for a very, very long time. Vaishnavite tradition will give him an age of 120 years. And he lived in a very, very turbulent time when the invasions had come to Srirangam. And during the time of Ulugh Khan's invasion, in fact, he had to flee from the island of Srirangam and he went to the Karnataka area and lived there for a long time. He was hoping, wanting to come back to this island town and worship Ranganatha, and that was possible only after Kumara Kampanna and Gopanna opened the doors of the Srirangam temple, and that was in 1371. At the age of 99, he came back and he started to worship Ranganatha once again after a gap of very many years of turbulent history. This Vedanta Deshika, who refused to compose about any Vijayanagara king, about any living human, applauded the efforts of Gopanarya, and he wrote a verse which is there in the second prakaram of the Srirangam temple. It is etched there in the form of an inscription. It is also there in the Vaishnavite work called the Guru Parampara, and I quote it: Aniya Anila Shringat Dyuti Rachita Jagat Ranjana Anjana Drehe Chenjyam Aradhya Kinchit Samayamata Nihatyo Dhanushkan Turushkan Lakshmi Kshmabhyam Ubhabhyam Saha Nija Nilaye Stapayan Ranganatham Samyak Varyam Saparyam Akrita Nija Yasho Darpano Gopanaryaha. He doesn't call him Gopanna, he calls him Gopanarya, the noble Gopanna. Yasho Darpano, mirror of fame. What have you done? You have gone to Srirangam, defeated the Turushkan, you have brought back the images of Ranganatha and the Ubayanachyas, Lakshmi Kshmabhyam. You have brought them back, you have reinstated here. What a tribute from a great scholar, an Acharya, to a official of the Vijayanagara Empire, because he had done virtually the impossible. You see, for the Vaishnavite, there is no greater temple as far as the Tamil country is concerned than Srirangam. And when that was closed and that was in a state of disrepair, these people must have been in utter despair. So it was opened, and that was the verse. It is in the Koil Orugu, which is a book that had been written over a long period of time. Urugu means a register. All the events that had happened in Srirangam are registered over there. Pre-Gopanna, post-Gopanna, everything. And Gopanarya's contribution, he also donated about 50 villages, approximately 50 villages to the Srirangam temple. So Kumara Kampanna's inscriptions are there, very many. In 1373, an inscription dated in 1373 on the west wall of the second prakaram mentions the gift of a kalmadam, stone structure at the center of the western portion. Look at the detailing of North Vikrama Cholan Tiruvidi to Pradhani Vittappar, son of Apparasa, when he restored the Thiruvidayatam. Thiruvidayatam means, it's a generic term, land granted to a Vishnu temple, and with the help of Veera Kampanna Udayar. So Veera Kampanna Udayar helped to restore the Srirangam temple, helped to restore so many other temples. I won't go into great detail. And again, another inscription, 1376, registers the gift of the village of Thurayur by Gopannangal towards repairs, flower gardens, choultry, etc. of the Pallavarayar Mata under the orders of Chikka Udayar. Chikka Udayar is Kumara Kampanna. So many inscriptions talking about contributions to the Srirangam temple. So after the conquest of the Sultan of Madurai, huge portion of South India came under the sway of Vijayanagara, and Kumara Kampanna proved to be as able an administrator as he was a warrior. Unfortunately, he died in 1374, and it is said that the kingdom of Vijayanagara was plunged in darkness because he was their hope after Bukkaraya. But then Bukkaraya selected another son, Harihara, and he didn't live long after the death of Kumara Kampanna, probably too huge a blow to the father. So Harihara II, I'll hurry now because there is I need to go fast. So he ascended the throne in 1377. Rebellions all over, he quelled them, and he appointed his son Virupaksha, called in inscriptions as Virupanna Udayar. Virupaksha because the family deity is Virupaksha in Hampi, and Bahmani Sultan invaded Vijayanagara with a large army. Since Harihara refused to comply with his request of making the river Tungabhadra the southern boundary of the kingdom, Krishna is in the north, that was the boundary. The Bahmani Sultan wanted Vijayanagara, the Tungabhadra, further south as the boundary. Harihara didn't comply. Vijayanagara was besieged, but the Bahmani army was defeated, and the Sultan was murdered. And taking advantage of the situation, Harihara took control of many ports in the Konkan area, west coast. He took charge of many places in the east coast after defeating the Reddis. And because of the west coast and the east coast being under his control, trade prospered like anything, and Vijayanagara, it was growing from Harihara to Bukka, now to Harihara II, and he had the title Vaidika Marga Sthapanacharya, master in establishing the ordinances prescribed by the Vedas, Veda Bhashya Prakashakaha, publisher of commentaries on the Vedas. They were doing a lot for the Vedic tradition. Benefactions to temples were many. There's a short inscription in the Kamakshi Amman temple dated 1393 that records that this ruler provided a copper door for the central shrine in this temple. In Kanchipuram, Varadaraja temple also, many contributions. And those who have gone to Hampi won't have missed this. This is the king's balance, the Tulabara that is there. Very famous structure. And Harihara was also known for making many Mahadanas, huge gifts. He's called, repeatedly known as the performers of Mahadanas. One of his famous copper plate inscriptions, the Alampundi copper plates, state that Harihara II was devoted to the performance of the 16 great gifts. Shodasha Mahadana Dikshitaha. The Shoraikavur plates of Virupaksha, his son, also mentioned this. The Satyamangalam copper plate inscription of Devaraya state poetically that Harihara, by erecting spacious halls for the performance of the 16 great gifts, Shodasha Mahamantapa, made the whole world Bhuvana, the dwelling Bhuvana of his wife, the goddess of fame. Harihara's wife is the goddess of fame. And the palace of Veera Harihara has been identified. This is all we have of his, but a very great king. we come to the time of his son Virupanodayar. He immediately ascended the throne on the death of his father. He ruled only for 1 year. Before that, he was the viceroy of the Tamil region. He even crossed over to Lanka. It wasn't just Rajaraja who did that from PS1. This Virupaksha also did it and extracted tribute from its ruler. And then the fight of succession began. Virupaksha crowned himself immediately after the death of his father. The rule came to an end after just 1 year. All right. Now, this 1 year only, but we have a lot of information about this king. Perhaps weak king, I don't know. Virupaksha was a supporter of the Vedic faith, and he is described as the establisher of the path of the Vedas. Continuously, the Vijayanagara rulers, each one of them emphasized this. Veda marga stapana tatparaha. Many religious activities. He weighed himself against gold in the presence of God Ramanatha and Rameshwaram. He gilded the Vimanam of the Srirangam temple and the Golden Hall, Kanaka Sabha at Chidambaram. So Rangaraja, Nataraja, both these great Rajas in Chidambaram received the benefactions of Virupaksha. He was a scholar. He wrote 2 plays. It wasn't just our friend Mahendra Varman who wrote 2 plays. Virupaksha also wrote 2 plays, Narayani Vilasam in 5 acts, and the Unmata Raghava in 1 act, which describes Rama's lament on the loss of Sita, patron of scholars, grants of villages. I'll just skip that. So this is one copper plate inscription of this King Virupaksha, signed Sri Virupaksha, not this Virupaksha, but God Virupaksha. And in Srirangam, many inscriptions. And there is an inscription on the south wall of the Chandana Mantapa in the second prakara of the Srirangam temple. And this is what it says. I won't read out the Sanskrit verse. It's just the translation. He who imparts knowledge, buddhi, is the father. They who gladden, hita, are the relatives, bandavaha. And she who is agreeable to her lord is the wife. I think the feminists here may have some contention with that, but nevertheless, this is the opening verse of the Narayani Vilasa, in which the Sutradhara introduces King Virupaksha as the author of the play. In another inscription, again in Sanskritam, in the Chakra Talvar is Sudarshana. Sudarshana's sanctum, it states that Virupaksha was a son of Harihara, grandson of Bukka, daughter's son, Dauhitra of Rama Bhupati. He constructed the Vimanam, Gopuram and Mantapam to Chakrin, note the word, Chakra Talvar or Vishnu. Chakrin is Sudarshana. Chakrin could also mean Vishnu. He who holds the chakra is Chakrin. And he further made a gift of a village called Pachil to this deity. And you have to corroborate. Whatever the inscription says, the Koil Urgu also says. It says, Koil Urgu says, Virupaksha constructed the sign of Sudarshana and installed an image of Narsimha therein. So this is the verse that is there. Pautro Bukka Narendrasya Dauhitro Ramabhupatihi Vidyatehi Virupaksho Raja Hariharatmajaha. Cleanly his genealogy is given. And the presence of the verses from Narayani Vilasam, that play that he wrote, which is there as inscription, I think just goes to show that he wanted to propagate his work. So now we just come to Chakrin. This Chakrin could be both Sudarshana, as I said, could be Vishnu. And Vedanta Deshika, so famous in the Vijayanagara times, wrote this work called the Shodasha Yudha Stotra, about the 16 great weapons of Sudarshana, 8 weapons in the left hand, 8 weapons in the right hand. And it is interesting to note, see the last line, that the Sudarshana Chakra is itself the foremost weapon held by Sudarshana in his hand. Sudarshana is an embodiment of the Chakra of Vishnu as the personification. That person, that God holds a Sudarshana in his hand. Yada yatam jagat chakram kala chakram cha shashvatam patu vastat param chakram chakra rupasya chakrinaha. That's why the name Chakrin over there, referring to Sudarshana, not referring to Vishnu here. So this is the translation. And this is the famous Sudarshana, the Chakra Talvar Samnadi in Srirangam. I know of die-hard worshippers of Ranganatha who find it difficult in their old age to walk all the way to the shrine of Periya Perumal, that is Ranganatha, and who will worship Chakra Talvar alone. This is how he looks in the Srirangam temple and come away. Coming back to Virupaksha, in that 1 year, see how much he did. The Dwajarohana flag hoisting ceremony of the Chithra festival in Srirangam was conducted in the name of Virupaksha, who enabled people coming from all parts of the country to visit the long missed Perumal, obtain seva. Association of Virupanna with the Chithra festival survived, and the festival is even today called the Virupan Tirunal. This is from the book by V. N. Hari Rao. Many of the ministers and other officials of Virupaksha's reign gave gifts to the temple, as seen from inscriptions, and it appears that during his time there was a huge effort to restore Srirangam temple to its days of glory. Now, this is again, I'm telling you, this Virupaksha was an interesting character. Please allow me to read this. He suddenly became disenchanted with life, suddenly. And then there was some turmoil in his mind. And this is what that Sanskritam inscription in Srirangam says. At one point of time, seeing the grave troubles and torments undergone by beings passing through the cycle of birth, death and rebirth, and moved by the deepest compassion for them, approached and prostrated himself before his own preceptor and the refuge of the whole world, namely Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Vidyaranya Sripada, who was the most distinguished of all ascetics, vision of whom was easy to the virtuous, whose mind was always engaged in meditation involving the self and the soul, who was like Shankaracharya incarnate. He then realized that without serving at the holy feet of this enlightened soul, he could not hope to get rid of the hauteur born of shortcomings attributable to the body, the mind and speech, and that he could not hope to see the dispelling of darkness, spiritual ignorance, and that he could not hope to achieve that spiritual height that would yield him the fruit of the four requisites of human existence: righteousness, wealth, fulfillment of desire and salvation. Was it spoken like a king? Not at all. So what happened, it is that an editor of this inscription says, it is known that Virupaksha crowned himself immediately after the death of Harihara, but was displaced after a short period by Bukka II. The spirit of disenchantment and his realization that salvation lay only in the service of sage Vidyaranya, as revealed by the inscription, may have made Virupaksha's exit from the throne not wholly involuntary. Something happened to this Virupaksha. A complete turmoil in his mind. Went from being quite a great warrior, think of Ashoka, into a spiritual world, and he fell at the feet of Swami Vidyaranya. And then his brother Devaraya takes over. Devaraya's rule commenced in 1406, filled with wars, completely filled with wars. There was a dynasty called the Gajapati dynasty in the Orissa, North Telangana area of today, and Bhanudeva was the king over there. Something skirmish happened between them, but it was avoided. War was avoided by skillful diplomacy. This is important, he was the first Vijayanagara ruler to understand that a large cavalry division was needed for his army, and he bought horses large scale from Arabia and Persia. More importantly, he also employed suitable people to take care of them. Why that suitable people to take care of them is because horses are not native to India. Successive Indian kings did not know how to take care of horses. Marco Polo, when he came to the Pandyan country, says they buy lots of horses, but they don't know how to take care of them. They don't give them the right kind of food. Elephants we know, cows we know, horses we don't know how to take care of. So Harihara also employed Turkish bowmen and paid them generously in land and money. Great devotee of God Shiva, devoted to goddess Pampa. Goddess Pampa was the consort of Virupaksha. The Pearl Hall was home to scholars and artists, and Vijayanagara became true to its name. Not many people know Vijayanagara, city of victory. They named it. It was prophetic. It was also called Vidyanagara in the time of Harihara the first itself, because in honor of Swami Vidyaranya. It was also Vidyanagar because it was full of learning, and some of the Sanskritam inscriptions from the Ranganatha Swami temple in Srirangam show his interest in restoring the temple to its former glory. And last line is also important. Many of his epigraphs mention donations to Uttama Nambi, the temple trustee, for arranging worship here. The family of Uttamanambi still continues in Srirangam, one of the coins of Devaraya the First. Again, interestingly, from the period of Devaraya, we have foreign travelers coming into Vijayanagara. After this Niccolo di Conti, a whole lot of them come. Many people from all parts of the world. Later, much later, a person called Abdur Razak, he was an ambassador from the court of Shah Rukh, the ruler of Persia, Sultan of Persia. Abdur Razak, ambassador, comes into Vijayanagara. This person must have gone to so many other countries, comes into Vijayanagara, and I'd like to quote what he said. The pupil of the eye has never seen a place like this, and the ear of intelligence has never been told there existed anything like this in the whole world, unquote. That was Abdur Razak, slightly later. Meanwhile, Niccolo di Conti says so many things. I've just quoted two. The circumference of the city is 60 miles. Its walls are carried up to the mountains and enclose the valleys at their foot. Their king is more powerful than all other kings of India. Book written by Niccolo Conti. This is Niccolo Conti. So if I go further than this, if I go off to Devaraya the second and all, I'll be crossing over to other people's turf. I don't want to do that. Topic given to me was beginnings of the Vijayanagara Empire. So after Devaraya, you have so many other people. The logo of the Vijayanagara kings, emperors, you will see in so many temples across South India. You'll see them on pillars. As I said, you'll see them on steps also. We step on them. We don't even look at them sometimes. I repeat that we have never been taught about the greatness of the Vijayanagara Empire, the empire that saved South India from Manian invasion, the empire that has retained the inherent indigenous culture of South India, saved our temples, our inscriptions, our sculptures, our music, our dance. Everything is intact because of the great work done by the Vijayanagara emperors and the people of the Vijayanagara times. We have not been taught, so we don't know. We don't know, so we don't care. Tamil Heritage Trust has done a great job in arranging these series of lectures, bringing into prominence this very great dynasty. And I think the rest is left to all of you to take forward the glory and the greatness of this immensely powerful empire, which has done great service to the history of South India. We are here today because of the Vijayanagara Empire. Please carry this forward. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chithra. That was an outstanding beginning to our Pechi Kacheri. So once again, can we have in the interest of time, we are not taking questions now. We will be taking a break, and Dr. Chithra will be available, and she is accessible for any questions that you might have. I now request Mr. Mohan Hariharan to come on stage and hand over a token of appreciation to Dr. Chithra.
It's really a great honor. We will carry the flag of Vijayanagara right from day one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. We will take a break, and we hope to be back in 10 minutes. Please have your coffee outside. You're not supposed to be bringing coffee inside the auditorium, so please enjoy your coffee outside.